Silence. Gunfire echoes in the distance, smoke hangs in the air, you move slowly through the ruins, no enemies in sight, no HUD pop-ups, no over-the-top dialogue, just silence. It only lasts a few seconds, but it stays with you, because in that stillness, something rare happens in an FPS game. You tend to feel more present. We don't often talk about silence in shooters. We obsess over time to kill, movement mechanics, recoil patterns, and meta shifts, but silence, that fragile, rare space between the violence, is one of the most powerful tools a game can use, and it's almost completely vanished from the genre. Most modern FPS games are terrified of any silence. They treat every second as a potential drop-off point, so they jam it full with dialogue, pings, unlocks, music, objectives, voice lines, emotes, battle passes, explosions, and announcements. The result is you kind of feel like you're playing inside of a slot machine. But silence isn't the absence of action, it's what gives action its shape. The silence before a breach builds dread. The silence after a shootout gives space to reflect. Without those moments, gunfights tend to lose their weight. The intensity of a fight just tends to fade into the rest of the noise. And this isn't just about games itself, it mirrors life. We are constantly bombarded by noise. Ads, notifications, doom scrolling, every app, every feed, every brand wants your attention right now. Silence feels like a failure. Boredom is a sin. And stillness, that's for quitters. But what if we need it? What if silence is the one thing that makes everything else matter? Let's talk about what happens when shooters actually let you sit in the quiet, and why most of them are afraid to do it. Modern FPS games don't just make noise, they scream. Boot one up and you're instantly greeted by a battle pass screen, flashing UI, unlock pings, announcers yelling objectives at you, and a menu theme that feels like Hans Zimmer on a caffeine drip. Before you even start playing, your brain is about halfway through the burnout cycle. Then the game starts. Gunfights are chaotic light shows, music cues swell, characters bark voice lines every 5 seconds like they're paid by the syllable. Explosions tend to punctuate everything, and just when the dust settles, victory screens, stats, skins, XP breakdowns, and a prompt to buy the next operator bundle.
Yeah, go check it out, bro. Holy shit!
There's not a single moment to breathe. No room to sit in what just happened. It's on to the next match, the next dopamine hit, and the next tiny rush of simulated achievement. And here's the problem. When everything is loud, nothing is. When a game tries to stimulate you every single second, the stimulation stops registering. You tend to become numb to it. That once brilliant firefight now blends into every other one. Every match becomes another blurred, high-intensity sprint to nowhere. It's not just tiring, it just feels empty. Now let's go in the other direction. Let's talk about Hunt Showdown. If modern shooters are theme park rides, Hunt is a quiet walk through the woods where something is always watching you. Hunt is built around silence, not just for immersion, but for survival. You don't tend to run and gun and hunt. You listen, you stalk, you interpret the silence, waiting for it to be broken by a distant gunfire or the flap of startled crows. Every step you take matters, every door creak is a broadcast, and when the fight breaks out, it is violent. It's deafening, it's terrifying. The sounds that are used are punchy and visceral, but that chaos only hits as well as it does because of the silence that comes before it. Then it ends. You don't get fanfare, you get ringing ears, a dead teammate, and a slow, quiet extraction as you wonder if anyone else is watching you. That moment of stillness is the reward. You made it, but you're probably still not safe. The same is true in Ready or Not. You're stacked up on a door, no music, no sound except your breath, and the distant footsteps of a suspect inside. The quiet before the breach isn't dead air, it's pressure. And after the breach, once the yelling and gunfire stops, the silence returns. Then there's Hell Let Loose. Not a game for the faint of heart or the short of patience. You can walk 10 minutes without firing a shot, but you're hyper aware the entire time. Mortars fall, distant gunfire cracks, and then nothing. What did he say? Oh! And it's in that nothing that the game earns its realism. Because war isn't just about the chaos, it's about the terrifying anticipation of that chaos. Even Foxhole, a top-down logistics and war sim, understands this. The silence isn't atmospheric, it's systemic. When you're deep in the back line behind the front, building a supply route, the quiet is purposeful. You're not in combat, you're still contributing, but the war is still happening. These games understand something that most shooters tend to forget. Silence is the tension in a game. It's what gives combat stakes. It's not filler, it's the thread that holds everything together. So why don't more shooters embrace this? Because silence is risky. We live in an age where every single second of media is competing for your attention. Scroll, tap, ping, play, repeat. Games have started treating you like a distracted viewer who might vanish at any moment. Quiet moments feel like a gamble. You know, what if the player gets bored? What if they alt-tab? What if they stop playing? So the industry leans harder into stimulation. Make it louder, brighter, faster, flood the player with sound, goals, stats, and movement. Never give them a second to think about it. But when you remove all of that silence, you lose the humanity of a game. You lose the breath behind it. You can create a game that feels like a YouTube ad break stretched into a live service format, and players walk away wondering why they feel so burned out, even when the gameplay was fun. Silence doesn't mean doing nothing. It just means doing something else. It means trusting the player to sit in a moment, to look around, and to really feel it. The games we mentioned don't lull you to sleep. They just heighten your senses. They force you to pay attention. Silence makes every sound a clue. Every footstep is a threat. Every breath is a decision. That's presence, and presence seems to be super rare now. It's why I love dopamine-fueled shooters like Ultra Kill and Titanfall. I love movement tech. I love speed. I love style. But even those games give you sort of micro moments to breathe. A quiet platforming section, a subtle narrative beat, a moment to reload and reset. Without those, the action starts to blur. Your brain never gets to process what just happened. Silence is what lets all of it land. And it's not about making every shooter slow. It's just about making the fast ones mean something. Silence isn't boring. It's design, it's structure, it's what gives chaos its purpose. You don't remember a fight just because it was loud. You tend to remember it because of what came before and what came after. The heartbeat of an empty hallway, the crack of a twig in the woods, the dead quiet of a building that you're not really sure if it's empty. Modern shooters are so scared to lose your attention that they forget how to earn it. And maybe that's the point. In a world addicted to noise, silence feels like rebellion. It's not just what FPS games are missing, it tends to be what we are too. And maybe, when it comes to game design, that quiet between the bullets is exactly where the magic happens.